Good evening, everybody. Keith Engel here for TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle, and it is the Football Huddle. Sports, yes, but it's football season. We've got real games such as they are this weekend, and we'll talk about all of those as we get into today's show and more. I want to welcome everybody watching us on Northeast Streaming Sports, on Let's Talk Sports. If you see us later on Sideline Sports, and of course on TGI Sports Talk. If you're catching us live, if you're welcome to share, bring up any topics you'd like to talk about tonight, any comments on what we do, bring up ourselves. Always welcome and always a big part of this show and all my shows. Real football coming, guys. Oh, and thank you to all the groups that might show this later on. One shout out I'll give tonight. Let's see if I can find it here. A quick little group shout out to, can we do one? Jeepers creepers. Where is that damn, it's too funny. There it is, a shout out to Greg Rawlings and Football is Life. I got to tell you, as one of the admins that helps this page, it's the way it's growing is unbelievable. I think there's like 30,000 followers now, maybe more. And the rest of the admins do a lot more than me. So join that group, follow that group. It's a great group. And Greg's got a good baseball group as well. So check those out. What else is going on in the world of college football? We got real games this weekend. We got some big injuries that have happened as well. I got to tell you, it's getting to be crunch time. It's going to be time to play real games, and guys are getting hurt. Georgia loses one of their key running backs. We would think this year, Branson Robinson. He ruptured a tendon earlier this week, and he's going to miss the season. Kirby Smarter says he will not change their pass run ratio, but they feel they have plenty of guys to step up. Who else? Washington lost Cam Davis for the year. Expected to be a key contributor to that team as well. They're fairly deep, and hopefully they will be able to overcome that as they have playoff hopes this year. And what else happened the last couple of days? Iowa defensive tackle, as we kind of expected, Noah Shannon suspended for the season due to this ongoing gambling probe there. We get a couple of good hellos in here while we're doing this. Who's with us? John DeLon's with us early. He wants to get going here. Hello, Bernie bros. Stop, John. Don't get me going tonight already. John DeLon is our resident not the only one, but I would say he's the president of the SEC Elitist Club, crown which he wears very proudly, by the way. Good evening, Dave Guyette. Please no calls to fire Cashman and Boone on this show, but we'll talk about that later in the week. They did lose depth at running back. We'll talk a little about and John, I want your opinion on this as we get into we're going to go around the conferences a little bit, look at some of the favorites and maybe surprise teams, top expected players and such around the conferences. You being an SEC elitist, me giving them their due, I think they're a great league. And, I do think we talk about this and we kind of debate it back and forth. I think the Big Ten has made strides everywhere but on the field. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I want to know, John, about your take on Alabama. And are they too highly rated early this season? Well, early preseason polls. AP has them 4. There's some other polls that might have them as high as 2. And is it just, sometimes it feels like the best evidence is, well, whatever, we know they got some issues, but Nick Saban will figure out a way to get it done. And there's every reason to give him the benefit of the doubt here, right? He's Nick Saban, greatest football coach of all time, without a doubt, in my mind. I've said that many times here on the show. There's little doubt Nick Saban is the greatest football coach of all time, college football coach of all time. I'm sure there are people that will debate me, but in my mind, he's the greatest. But is Alabama overrated this year? Other great stories is Georgia tries a three-peat. Hasn't happened since the 50s? 2 times in history, that's it. 3 peats. Last time we had a chance, we've talked about this before, John Dillon's beloved Pac-12 USC Trojans lost trying to win a 3-peat against the Texas Longhorns, I think in 2005, I want to say. Good evening to Linda and Mac over at Mac Sports. Good to have you guys with us tonight. Notre Dame's starting its own division. Listen, Notre Dame's kind of sitting in the catbird seat. Notre Dame's contract will come up with NBC in another year, or for 2025, I believe. They're either going to get $50 million from NBC and stay an independent, or they're going to join a conference and get $50 or $60 million that way. So they're really sitting in the catbird seat here. And they will open up this weekend in Dublin against the Cadets of Navy. John DeLon, President, CEO, COO, and acting treasurer of the SEC Elites. I told you John, embraces this role. I don't know where you're collecting money from, though. Just acting treasurer. What happened to the treasurer you're filling in for is what I'd like to know. Bama seems to be getting back to somewhere between murder ball and being more balanced, i.e. what Nick knows. I.e. what Nick knows how to coach. I think they'll be 9-3 at worst. 9-3 is like a disaster in Alabama, though, isn't it? Let's look quick at their schedule, shall we? As we are wont to do on the show when this type of thing comes up. Listen, I'm a big believer in Nick Saban. I think they're going to have trouble this year. They had trouble with their wide receivers last year. Even with Bryce Young, the wide receivers were inconsistent at best. And this could be more of the same this year. We'll see how that plays out. Let's look at their schedule. Let's see what MTSU, I think, will win. Texas, a big game. Texas, Alabama, the 9th of September is a big game for all involved. It's a big game for Alabama, I think, to overcome the naysayers. It's a big game for Texas to hush up the people thinking they're overrated, which I don't know if I'm one or not. I don't know yet. I like the team. I think they're loaded with talent. Loaded. But Steve Sarkisian has yet to show me that he can win at this level. So anyway, let's just say and that game will be at home for Alabama. I'm going to give them the win. 2-0. South Florida. 3-0. Ole Miss at home. You know how I like Lane Kiffin, but I got to give that to Alabama. 4-0. Mississippi State, 5-0. At Texas A&M. Another sneaky game to watch out for. I'm going to say 5-1. Arkansas, they beat 6-1. Tennessee, 7-1. LSU, I'm going to call a loss right now. 7-2. 8-2, they beat Kentucky. 9-2, they beat Chattanooga. I hate these games that late in the season, man. Will you stop it? John, one of my big gripes, and I understand you're going to throw the schedule at me and everything else. One of my big gripes is that every year, this 11th week, I seem to get Chattanooga and Samford and all these other football powers. At Auburn in the Iron Bowl. At Auburn, Hugh Freeze coming in there, improving the squad. I'm going to call Alabama winner 10-2. 10-2. Bama's probably going to play a lot of young players this year. Could be a lot of growing pains. If that's the case, they could be in trouble against Texas. We'll see. Texas is like the 50s dad who went out for a pack of cigarettes and never came back. John, that's a good one. John always makes me laugh. Neil Bush is with us tonight. Good to have you with us, Neil. Neil, a big South Carolina fan. Since we're talking about this, South Carolina wins the SEC East, including a Georgia upset. Now, I'm going to have to say this feels like wishful thinking. Let's look at South Carolina's schedule. Now we're going to get to some of the conference. We're going to go through some conferences. We're not going to spend all night on the SEC, although we could. The Gamecocks greatly improved last year, by the way. Shane Beamer, really good football coach. Rattler played better as the season went on last year. We'll see how things do work out for him. Alan, I see you there. Welcome to the show, Alan Perales. We'll get to you in a second. We know where Alan stands in this debate this year. He loves his Oklahoma teams. Let's look at South Carolina. First of all, very tough match in a rivalry that doesn't happen every year anymore against North Carolina and Drake May, the first game. It's at home. I'm going to give South Carolina a slight edge here, but I would not be shocked to see North Carolina win this game. They beat Furman. I'm sorry, at Georgia, I can't give you a win. 2-1. I'll give you Mississippi State, 3-1. I give you Tennessee only because of the quarterback situation. We'll see how Milton makes out. 4-1. Florida at home, 5-1. At Missouri, 6-1. I like Missouri's improved. I'm going to have you losing at Texas A&M, winning Jacksonville State, winning Vanderbilt, winning Kentucky, who you know I like, and losing to Clemson in another great rivalry game. So I think I had you with 3 losses here, didn't I? 1, 2, 3. I got you 9-3, Neil. And how many in the conference? 2. Got to be tough to win that East with 2 losses. If you beat Georgia, you got a great shot. So you're going to know by the 16th of September how well your prediction will stand, I would guess. But much improved team. Shane Bieber's a really good football coach. 3 things in life are facts: death, taxes, and Texas refusing to be back. If they start hiring the right coach, Texas A&M and Texas ought to be going back to the same league because they're the same team. They recruit, top 5 recruiting classes year after year and can't seem to put it together in the field. Neil, you have Rattler. He's inconsistent at best. I will say this again, and Neil's got a comment coming up, which we'll get to. Shane Rattler played much better. Sean Rattler. I keep mixing up the coach and the players' first names. Rattler played much better the second half of last year. Played very well in the bowl game. I think Rattler is ready to take the next step. Game day, there will be an opener. Will be the game day. That's right. Game day is at the opener. I did see the lineup. That's probably one of the best matchups. We looked at those last week. We'll look at them again this week. That's an exciting, it's an ABC game, 7:30. Game day. Crew on board. By the way, boo hiss to ESPN for firing David Pollack, who I thought was one of the better contributors on game day. To fire David Pollack, and they kept the rest of that crew together, who I think the chemistry is really good, but they keep, oh God, isn't that terrible? What's a nut job they just signed for a gazillion dollars? They fire all this talent and they give, to me, just an over-the-top publicity hound, like, help me out, somebody, who they brought into the crew last year. They keep him and fire a really solid contributor like David Pollack. It'll come to me. I want to say McElroy. That's not his name. Help me out. Athens is the top 3 hardest places to play in the SEC. Country, John. I think you're shortchanging the crowd at Athens. So wondering why Drinkwitz got an extension last year. Oh, God, where am I? Austin, Texas has been overrun. We went through this already. Austin has been overrun with Californians, that place. Well, they got to go somewhere to get away from the hurricanes and the mudslides, earthquakes, forest fires. Place has gone softer in 85 years. John got the dad joke or something, dad joke book out tonight or something. John's on fire out of the gate today. SEC Nation is going to be in Hawaii this week. Hopefully, Laura Rutledge wears a bikini. I've lost control of John DeLon already. ESPN seems, yeah, they do. You know, we pay, somebody help me out. What? McAfee. Thank you, Jesus Christ. Pat McAfee. By the way, in my mind, this guy brings nothing but bluster to whatever show he's on. I'm sorry. I mean, other than contributing Yahoo, riling up the Yahoos in the crowds at game day, I didn't see what he brought to the show last year. David Pollack, a solid contributor. This is a great group that works great together. And I think it's a shame, but that's just me. Thank you for helping me out with the name there, Alan. Sometimes my 63-year-old brain doesn't work that well. Rick Sherlock, good evening. Did I see the coach speak with the players who gave up his scholarship for a teammate? Leadership cannot be overstated. I didn't see this. Rick, which coach are we talking about? Because I'd love to take a quick look at it and chat a little more about it. Because you know how I feel about leadership. And if a player gives up a scholarship to a teammate who can use it, for whatever reason, I'd love to get the context behind this whole thing. I think that'd be great. Neil Bush, McAfee's a blowhard. Absolutely agree. Pat McAfee. Ugh. Is that not his name? Hawaii's at Vanderbilt, so good time to get out of Hawaii. John lost his leash. You're off your meds tonight, I think, too. Hey, Pat McAfee has he is clearly for the kids, like stupid. I agree. Dave got rid of a lot of competent talent. I'm on a tangent myself here, but they fired, not lost. They fired a lot of competent talent at ESPN, and they keep blowhards like, as Neil Bush said, like Pat McAfee around. And again, it's about, what's very funny is he's there for the kids. But, you know, the guys watching game day and watching podcasts who have disposable income to spend are not the people that are watching Pat McAfee. I don't think. Because it happened to be one of them. Thank you, Rick, by the way. I'll see if I can take a quick look at it while we're talking here tonight, because I'd like to. If I can get the page to open, we'll take a look at it for sure. What do you got, Rick? You need to have Scott help you with the remembering stuff. Well, that's where we help each other out. He forgets, I fill him in. I forget, he fills me in. That's what happens at the home. We play flashcards during the day to get our mind ready for our shows. The player gave up his scholarship, found out that found out the walk-in was donating blood and plasma to pay for his tuition. My gosh. Where is this? Oh, let's see if I can get Facebook to open up here. Rick said he sent it to my Facebook page. If I can get Facebook to open. TGI Sports Talk. Let's take a quick look at this, because these are the stories. Maybe I got too much going on here. Let's not ruin our feed. We'll get to it when we can get to it, I guess. I think it's a great story. The kid. Let's see if I got a message here from. I was hoping for a message from Dan Harris. I hope Dan Harris is doing well, guys. I have not talked to Dan in a few days. And Alan, I don't know if you know anything what's going on with Dan. I hope he's okay. Give me thumbs up if you or anybody else has talked to Dan the last couple days. Despite being, what the hell was that? Dropping things already. Despite being a former Bulldog, he was solid but tough on Georgia. Who are we talking about? Oh, that's right. David Pollock. Yes, he was. Listen, he was fair, and he brought really good information to that show. Some good human interest stories, and he'll be missed. So, again, it's a shame. Let's jump around the leagues a little bit. Predictions. ACC. My champion, Florida State, beats Clemson twice in the last few weeks. They got some great offensive players, but I like Drake May. I can't root against, on the defensive side of the football, Jared Verse from Florida State. Played great last year. He's an Albany U transfer. If you guys don't know, probably don't know, it's down south there. But he did play here in the Capital District of New York at Albany State before transferring to Clemson. Coach on the hot seat, Dino Babers. I think there's a few other guys too. I think the Boston College coach, whose name is escaping me again at the moment. Here we go again. It's not like I don't know these things. You know, it's gotten so when I watch Jeopardy, I get the answers. I have the answers right at the top of my tongue, and they just don't come out. Jeff Hafley, the coach at Boston College. He could be, I think he and Dino Babers might be on the hottest of seats in the ACC. The team that might come from nowhere in the ACC, I'm going to say Miami. Maybe that's my heart more than my head. Team taking the biggest drop. Maybe I said Duke would get to 9 wins. I still think they will. I think they've got a tough road to hoe to get there. I think Pittsburgh's another team to watch out for, possibly bottoming out a little bit. And I think, you know, one of the other big stories is, will Drake May win the Heisman in his sophomore year? I think a lot of people have. I haven't either. I sent him a message the other day, and I'm hoping to hear something back from him soon, just so I know he's okay. And maybe I'll reach out to Johnny Cruz. Anyway, keep a good thought in your mind for our good friend from Let's Talk Sports, Dan Harris, over in the UK. So again, Drake May, does he win the Heisman? Is one of the other big stories. Moving to the Big Ten. The year before the big change, before USC and UCLA joined. And I guess we'll talk about Jim Harbaugh while we're on this league. I think Michigan repeats. I think this still comes down to Michigan and Ohio State. Penn State, again, you Penn State fans, you can root all you want and tell me how you played so well against Utah in the Rose Bowl and how you were the best team in the Big Ten. You got to beat Michigan, Ohio State a couple times, or at least once. How about that? In the same year, and maybe get to a conference championship game to have a chance at a playoff. John Franklin has yet to show me he can do this. Potential surprise teams here. Got to watch out for Wisconsin rebounding with Luke Fickell as their new head coach. If Iowa can average 10 points a game and get out of the dark ages with their offense and survive the gambling allegations that they're suffering through now, they could be a surprise team in the West. But again, they'll get blown out in the Big Ten championship game if they were to win the West. Nebraska's a good story with Matt Rule. They've got some great offensive players. Marvin Harrison, Blake Corum from Marvin Harrison Jr., from Ohio State. Blake Corum. Coaches on the hot seat. Tom Allen at Indiana's got to be on the hot seat. Mel Tucker better be careful. If it wasn't for that huge contract, he'd be in big trouble right now. Maybe even Greg Schiano at Rutgers. What do you got for me, John? Dino's a perfect fit for Syracuse. Not sure why they can. Listen, I agree with you 100%. I think Dino Babers is a really good head coach, a really good coach, especially at the level Syracuse plays at. And they don't focus on the football program. They don't even focus on the basketball program now. Syracuse has a very storied history, both in football and basketball. Not as prolific in football, but they've certainly had great teams in the 50s, early 60s with Jim Brown and there we go again. It'll come to me. Tragic story, died of leukemia. I got to look this one up. By the way, they've had some great running backs come through there, not just Jim Brown and my other favorite running back, who I'm trying to tell you right now. Let's try Best. By the way, other guys that have come through there, Floyd Little, Larry Zonka, some great running backs have come through that university. There we go. Top 10, top 5 in history. Here I am. Just like the stream of consciousness sometimes, right? Joe Morris, another great running back come out of there. Larry Zonka, as I said. Come on. Floyd Little, as I said, in the top 2. There, here he is. Ernie Davis. How can I forget Ernie Davis? Great movie. No idea what the name of the movie is now, but great movie about Ernie Davis, who you don't know, won a Heisman and was drafted by the Cleveland Browns in the first round and never got the chance to play in the NFL as he died of leukemia before he had a chance. Hot take from Alan. Michigan will be on upset alert. Now, they're not cutting loose. They're at home, Alan. That's a hot take. I'll give you that, though. That wouldn't be my hottest take for week 1. And by the way, the Jim Harbaugh thing is still odd to me. First, he's got a 4-game suspension that was negotiated. Then the NCAA infraction committee, or whatever we're calling it these days, says we haven't signed off on that. And then the university says we're self-imposing a 3-game ban on Coach Harbaugh. Well, when is the infraction committee going to speak up and say, okay, that's what we want. That's good. This thing's still in limbo, and people act like it's over. It's not. Well, maybe it is, because if we know anything about the NCAA, they're not going to act fastly. Quit fastly. Is fastly a word? Perth Education pops up again. Quickly, John DeLon honestly thinks Jim Harbaugh is getting jobbed. I do too. Listen, the infractions were ridiculous. The problem, he's getting punished for the cover-up, right? He lied to the investigators, and that's why he's being punished. And there's also there's always been, for whatever reason, and I talked about this, and John, you're an SEC guy, and Rick, I know, has no love lost for Jim Harbaugh because he flirted with his Vikings a couple of years ago to get a pay raise at Michigan, which he ended up losing. But I think Jim Harbaugh is a really good coach, and I don't see why he is such a polarizing figure. I mean, if you're a Michigan guy, I guess I get it, but there you go. The answer's right in here. He's an unlikable person that falls somewhere between thinking it's funny and not caring. Oh, you fall somewhere between thinking it's funny and not caring. Why do we think Jim Harbaugh's unlikable? Do we find him to be a phony? I struggle with this because I don't see anything other than a coach who has climbed a ladder like any coach should want to do, improve his situation. He's made every team that he went to better than they were before he got there. Left them all in better shape than when he got there, unlike some coaches. So I'm curious about the whole thing. John thinks Mel Tucker will right the ship eventually. That's what the problem is. That league's just going to get better and tougher. Not that they're going to get SC every year, but Gale Sayers went to Kansas, by the way. But great running back, one of the great college running backs of all time. maybe, and by the way, and I'll say this, and this is not a NFL show. If Gale Sayers had not gotten hurt, I think Gale Sayers would be known as the greatest running back of all time on both levels. I thought you were talking about Brian's song. No, I was talking about, I don't remember the name of the movie now, but it's the Ernie Davis story. Maybe that was the name of the movie. I don't know. Really, really, really good movie. Check it out. I think it's possible the NCAA will come back for the rest of its pound of flesh next year with Harbaugh thing, or he gets out of town, right? Now, this could be him getting out of town before the posse, right? Which he has not really done in his career. Again, he got a really bad program at San Diego on right footing. San Diego, by the way, not San Diego State, San Diego. Went to Stanford and had a lot of good years there. Oh, had a shot at a national championship one year. Went to San Francisco, turned that whole thing around, got to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick as his quarterback, for crying out loud. That's a pretty good coaching accomplishment. And then goes to his alma mater and turns that mess around. Took him a while to beat Ohio State. I get that. I really never understand the fervor around Harbaugh. Polarizing, interesting choice of words, especially being that he's a bipolar weirdo. Yeah. Again, he is. I mean, either people love him or they hate him. So I guess it is bipolar all the way around. Good evening, Anthony Price. Good to have you with us. Hope you did well in the draft the other night. Went pretty good, I thought, pretty quickly. Did you know that the 49ers front office threw a party the day Harbaugh cleared out his offices? No, I don't know. I'm sure, but how much of that is hyperbole too, John? How much do we know about really goes on when people leave jobs and who rejoices and who doesn't? You know, one of the biggest jerks in all of the freaking football coaching fraternity is Bill Parcells, but he's a great football coach. Horrendous human being. I've seen that up close. Sit next to him at a bar for a couple hours. But did they throw a party? Probably. Who cares? I mean, again, maybe people don't like him. Is he a good football coach? Has he been on pro? I mean, again, the allegations against him, as you said, you feel like he's getting jobbed. Again, I think maybe it's his own hubris that gets him this suspension, is because he thinks he could just, say whatever he wanted to say and lie his way out of it. And again, as I said, when these allegations first, I should say the suspension news first came out a month ago or better, I compared it to the Watergate. It's never the crime. It's always the cover-up. That's what gets these guys in trouble. Well, Rick, a lot of great coaches never finished the job. Your coach at Minnesota never finished the job. But again, we don't look at him and hold that against him forever. He's done better than any Michigan coach since Lloyd Carr. And he's no worse than the third best coach in Michigan history, probably. And again, got to a Super Bowl, I'll say again, with one of your favorite guys, and I say that facetiously, Rick, Colin Kaepernick, who, by the way, is out of football because he can't play. He tricked up his offense and got himself to a Super Bowl with a very, and I got to talk forever about John Harbaugh here tonight, or Jim Harbaugh. John Harbaugh we like, but John Harbaugh is no better than Jim Harbaugh when it comes to some of the nonsense that comes out of his yap. Apparently, Jim is a very exhausting man. Apparently. Harbaugh bought burgers. Now he has to sit out because of cupcakes. Good evening, Ed from Columbus. Good to have you with us. I can see where your allegiance would be here, Ed. And by the way, I had a good time for you to pop in. We're talking about the Big Ten a little bit. How much of a hot seat, and is it fair that Ryan Day, rightly, wrongly, or even correctly or incorrectly, feels like he's on a hot seat in Ohio State? I've talked about it here. He hasn't coached badly. The team played very well, albeit in a losing effort in the playoff last year. The defense has got to be better. I get it, and he's got to beat Michigan. You can't get beat badly by Michigan, obviously, and keep this job. Ask John Cooper, right? But I'm curious what your thoughts are on Ryan Day, Ed, and how you think, how warm you might think his seat is, and should it be if it is? See, now that's interesting, because if Michigan senses that Jim might leave to avoid the rest of his punishment, they might just hang him out to dry instead of taking the rap for him. Excellent point. Sacrificial lamb. I do think, by the way, I guess we're not going to get off Harbaugh just yet. I do think that Jim Harbaugh has been trying to find his way back to the NFL for 3 or 4 years now. Since things went in a crapper during COVID at Michigan, and they had one of the worst seasons in their history, and he had to take a severe pay cut and change assistants. I think he's been trying to find his way back. I don't think he was using Minnesota, as Rick Sherlock will tell you. He was using Minnesota to get himself a better contract at Michigan. I don't think the Minnesota Vikings wanted him. But, given his track record, if you had a school or a professional team to turn around, wouldn't you want to get a Jim Harbaugh? Who cares about his quirky personality? If he's a winner, Washington was having a party when Dan Snyder was leaving. Well, that's a totally different situation, Anthony, for sure. But I'm sure there were a lot of parties happening there, and probably not the same kind of parties that were happening during Dan Snyder's tenure there. Only Michigan fans like Harbaugh, and I wouldn't even say all of them like old Gibberly. John's got the 4 Grey Cups. Well, come on. Come on, Rick. Oh, my God. All right, touche. 4 Grey Cups. He finished the job in Canada. I don't have an argument for that, except it's, they give you a point up there when you miss a field goal. The Rouge, if there's anything that tells me Canadian football is not real football, it's the Rouge. Creating your own reality is often a flow of bipolar people. Just say, I better be careful. Oh, flaw. What does that say? Creating your own, flaw. Well, flow works too, probably. CA's with us. Good evening, CA. Thank you, by the way, for getting the NFL Fantasy League off the ground. You did a great job, and thanks to Jay. We still don't know who Jay is, our last contestant who filled our draft class, and things went off without a hitch on Sunday night. And there's our boy, Ed. We don't need another John Cooper. We don't know. It's unfair, but that's the way it goes. I agree. So I guess you're saying that, yes, Ryan Day is on the hot seat in Ohio State, at Ohio State. Also, if Day can't develop McCord or Brown, his seat will be even hotter than Hawaii. Might be too soon. Might be too soon there, Ed, but we're not politically correct here, so don't worry about that. I would have to agree with you. They better develop a quarterback pretty quickly, for sure. They got some talent there, though, still on the offensive side of the football, even with all the wide receivers they've lost and losing C.J. Stroud. And I wonder if he's going to translate on the next level. We talk a lot on my shows about, well, I don't, but a few of my more passionate followers feel that Ohio State doesn't, and that's not their job, by the way. It's not Ryan Day's job or university's job to produce NFL quarterbacks. It's their job to win in college. I say that all the time. So it's interesting. We'll see if CJ Stroud can break that streak. Jim did more than buy recruit a hamburger. He also held illegal Zoom practices. That was the coaches, but again, they're also going to be suspended for a game as well. An illegal contract with recruits during COVID. We did have different restrictions during the COVID, with the time of COVID, if you will, and the blackout periods were different. Again, the infractions are pretty penny ante in my mind. But when you lie to investigators and try to cover up the petty crime you did, well, this is what happens. The day Jim Harbaugh comes to the NFL, Deion Sanders will be coming behind him. I don't know. It's an interesting question about Deion. What's going to be the next step for Deion? I don't think he's at Colorado for life. Does anybody? But I'm not sure I see Deion in the NFL. I feel like Deion is a college guy. By the way, I thought Deion was going to be a complete joke when Jackson State hired him. But he showed that he can coach. He showed that he can motivate kids as well. I don't know if you watched Coach Prime, but he's a tough on his kids, and he's a really good motivator, and he's not a bad football coach. I don't think, he's obviously not doing all the X's and O's there, but he turned over 75% of that roster, or 75, more than that, probably 75 players on that roster at Colorado. We'll see what happens. I don't know if the NFL is in Deion's future. I do believe a bigger job in college is in his future. And if Mike Norvell hadn't turned things around at Florida State, I do believe that's where Deion would be right now. But great point, Anthony. You guys are good tonight with the comments. We won't get to anything I want to talk about, and that's all good. We like this. Washington, D.C. Now, they don't have any parties there. Well, our tax dollars aren't just spending for, the business of the country. I think the rumor as to why things didn't work out between the Vikings and Harbaugh was because Jim wanted a new quarterback and Minnesota wanted to stick with whoever they had already, Kirk Cousins. That is part of the issue there, I think. I know that, and Rick may speak up here. I don't want to speak for him. I know Rick still thinks he used Minnesota, had no intention of taking the job that wasn't offered to him. And again, there were talk definitely that he did not want to coach the Vikings with Kirk Cousins there. By the way, again, I will say, watch Quarterback on Netflix if you want to get I got a really much better appreciation for Kirk Cousins. Who he is as a quarterback is who he is. When you watch this and you see him off the field, interact with his teammates, interact with his fans, interact with just in daily life, I got a much better feel of who Kirk Cousins really is and what drives him. So watch that. If you haven't, check it out. Rick's talking about Ohio State played Georgia better than any other team. They didn't lose due to coaching. They did lose due to coaching in the sense that they couldn't stop their defensive. They have not really gotten better on the defensive side of the football the last couple of years. I mean, they were a bit better last year, I think, but and again, I can let Ed speak to this, but I don't know who they brought in there this year to help that defense. We'll see here as the season gets started. The biggest game, Big Ten wise, for about a month is really because the early part of this season is awful in the Big Ten, by the way. But Ohio State and Notre Dame is going to be the best game the Big Ten has to offer the first few weeks of the season. Apparently, Jim told the NCAA that he didn't contact recruits during COVID. Yes, we know he lied to the investigators, and the investigators found text messages on Jim's phone. He should have learned from Tom Brady and destroyed the phone to recruits during COVID. Oh my! But the thing is, are these major violations? You don't think everybody's doing this stuff? John with Dion. 3 years or less. I don't disagree. I think this year might be a bit of a struggle for Colorado. I think he has a decent year in year 2. And God knows what will happen in that new Big 12. And I think how long he stays there might depend on whether Florida State lives up to expectations. As I said, Mike Norvell righted the ship late last year. They didn't get off to a great start. Big things are expected of Florida State from a lot of people, including myself, this year. It's going to be interesting to see if they live up to those expectations, and that may dictate how long go some distance in dictating how long Dion is in Colorado or at Colorado. I know colleges are liberal, but the Big Ten has 18 teams and the Big 12 have 16. No wonder kids suck in baths. Yes, Ed, I talk about this almost every week. I mean, I'm not a math wizard. Rick Sherlock, one of our loyal followers, is a fellow Perth graduate, and math was not my strong suit. But I can count to 18. I can count to 16. At least the Pac-12 had that right. It is a little. I'm not sure whether liberal. I'm not sure whether liberalness, if that's a correct term, has anything to do with their bad math. But I'll accept your answer. The only parties in D.C. are Hunter Biden's Coke parties. By the way, I don't want to get last week we dove too far off into politics. I just have to say it took Joe Biden too long to get to Hawaii. But when he finally got there, he should have stayed away. What a horrible tone-deaf message to go out there and tell jokes and compare a fire that got put out with a fire extinguisher in your basement to what these people are going through in Hawaii. I've never seen a more tone-deaf administration in my entire life. But I'm not going to get into politics tonight. Buckeyes D blows. Ed, if you're going to follow this show, you got to say what you mean. I love it. So you're not expecting it to be any better this year, I assume. I like straightforwardness, and you know what? You got to be able to be hard on your own team when they deserve it. Being a Miami fan, I get it. Miami Hurricanes, not Miami Dolphins. And by marriage, came across this by marriage, kind of. We're going to move into, we talked about the ACC area. I'm not talking about Big Ten. We're going to move out of the Big Ten for a bit, and we're going to go to the Big 12, Alan Perales, if you're still with us. If Dion can win 6 games this year, he probably won't get plucked by a better program, but it's a possibility. It's always going to be a possibility. This is why I was surprised. Well, first of all, he probably could have stayed at Jackson State and waited for a better job than Colorado. Colorado's not a plum job at Power 5 college. Now, it is a Power 5 school. And winning 6 games there this year would be quite an achievement, John, considering, this is one of the worst programs in the country, maybe, and probably the worst Power 5 program in the country, which is saying a lot when we consider Vanderbilt and even Northwestern before even they were going through the nonsense that they're going through now. So I think it's probably the worst program in Power 5 conferences. So if he wins 6 games this year, and again, great turnover, is not even close to the same team. Huge. Hit the transfer portal. Huge. He could be looking at a different job next year. But I think he wants Florida State. And I think he'll wait to see if Mike Norvell flops with the big expectations. That could be as soon as next year, I suppose. If Florida State really went in the toilet this year, we could see that. CA, it bothers Jim that his brother is viewed as a better coach, more so than, I don't believe there's evidence to show that Jim Harbaugh is a bad coach. Didn't finish the job in San Francisco. I get it. He also got to a Super Bowl and got beat by his brother. But he got there with a very dysfunctional offense, a tricked up offense led by a guy who can't play in the NFL. He won at San Diego State. He won at Stanford for a number of years. Now, he had a great quarterback. But I don't think, listen, John's a great coach, and I think the difference, the perception, the difference, because, by the way, John's got a bit of a prickly attitude here and there, too, by the way. Being a Patriot fan, I've seen it many times in the playoffs. But John stayed at one place where Jim didn't. I think that's the difference, partly why they're viewed differently. Regional conference names are the best. SEC. Does have a great ring to it, yes. By the way, and again, those great names will be going away in a few years, John, when we have our Premier League. There will be no SEC. Well, maybe there will be. We could still have a Southeast Conference division. I guess it would be SED instead of SEC. It'd be SED. Jim Knowles' defense takes 2 or 3 years to install. Ohio State will have an elite defense in time, possibly a replacement for Day. I don't know about elite. Problem is, and again, it's not just Ohio State. Again, I do this when I review the scores on the Sunday Stream of Conscience show. When I review college football scores, it's like looking at basketball scores in half the time. Offense has really taken over college football for the most part. I mean, Georgia, and we talked about this a lot too. Georgia was, again, not the norm the last couple of years. And even their defense last year wasn't as good. Would they give up 48 points to Ohio State in the playoff? And to Rick's point about coaching, Ryan Day's coaching was not the reason they lost that game. I don't disagree. I'm not saying Ryan Day should be fired by any means. But I know the culture at Ohio State is if you don't beat Michigan, nothing else matters. Ed, I know you know the story, and I'm sure you can comment on it. Woody Hayes famously said during the 10-year war, 10-year, what they call that? I guess the 10-year war, right? Between Ohio State and Michigan, Bo Schembechler got there. Former Woody Hayes assistant. One year, Ohio State was beating Michigan with less than a minute to play, and they scored to go up by high 40s, low 50s to nothing, let's say. They're up by 50-some points, roughly. And Woody, the conversion goes for 2. And they asked him after the game why he didn't go for 1. No, why did he go for 2? He says, because they wouldn't let me go for 3. One of the great stories, Woody Hayes story ever. And unfortunately, Woody's career ended rather badly. They better hang 100 on Michigan. But all right, Ed's definitely not in love with the Ohio State offense or Jim Knowles' defense. I'm sorry, in love with their defense. Far cry. It's interesting. It took the Big Ten a while to get going when it comes to the changes on the college football landscape and the way the game's played. But they've certainly made strides the last few years as far as, at least against themselves, against each other. The scoreboard lights up for everybody except Iowa. Should be. He's a better athlete. Grace is waiting Jim. Grace is waiting Jim. Should be enough that he's a better athlete. Oh, I see. Jim was a better athlete. Jim did have a great college career at Michigan. He did have a decent NFL career too with the Bears and the Colts. And I'm sure if he played anywhere else, but he had a respectable career. Can't believe we spent this much time talking about Jim Harbaugh, but it's fine. If both brothers switch, will they have the same success? That's a great question, Anthony. I'm going to think you think no. I'm going to guess you think no. And I'm going to say no just because Jim probably would not have stayed at Baltimore as long as John has. It's a good question. And as I think about it, could John have done what Jim did, resurrecting 4 different, San Diego, Stanford, San Francisco, and Michigan. Now, again, every one of those teams or programs was on a downward slide, a pretty deep one in some cases. And he turned them all around. Whether John could have done that, he did it in Baltimore. Whether he could have done that 4 times, it's interesting. That's in an alternate universe. That's a great question to ponder, Anthony. Special teams suck everywhere. And they aren't even going to matter in the NFL with the new rules on kickoffs and such. And that's probably coming in college. Actually, they already have some rules in college, I think, where if you fair catch the ball inside the 10, you get the ball to 25, right? So special teams play and they matter. They matter. And nobody pays attention to it. The good teams do. But you're right, Rick. We talk about special teams a lot, and teams go for 2 because you can't go for 3. That's right. Woody Hayes had it right that day. Woody Hayes was a thug. Great coach. He might have been a thug. And I said the way he went out was ugly. I'm not apologizing or I'm not letting Woody Hayes off the hook for the way his career ended. And Woody could have been viewed as a bully throughout his career, but there's no denying that he was a great football coach. Again, that's the case of a lot of guys that we've talked about tonight. And a lot of nights. We could bring up a whole list of guys that were great coaches, but bad people. Nope. I'm not sure where that one's from, Rick. Jim Harbaugh threw a pass that ended LSU's great Wendell Davis's career. Did he? I don't remember that, John. Was that when he was that's in college? Do you see a top team falling and a bad team rising? There we go. Let's get to that. I do. I think you got a couple candidates to fall. And I'm going to go with the AP top 25. Here's a couple teams I think could fall. Alabama, again, John said he could see them going at worst 9-3. That's a pretty deep drop. Well, that's not a good season for Alabama. Do I see them losing more than that? It's possible they could lose 4 games. I think Alabama's a possibility. Tennessee's a good possibility, I think, this year. Losing their top 2 wide receivers. They lose their quarterback. Heupel's a good coach, but I think they're a possibility to fall too. And USC possibly, if that defense doesn't improve, and they've got Washington and Oregon on the schedule this year where they didn't last year, they could fall. They could be anywhere from a Final Four contestant to falling out of the top 15, let's say. As far as teams that could surprise, and again, I'm not saying these teams will. Wisconsin with new coach Luke Fickell, we'll see how that plays out. A little bit of a new offensive approach in Madison. North Carolina, again, if the defense steps up, Drake May is a real deal. There's a team that could surprise a bit. I talked about Florida State, but that wouldn't be a team rising necessarily. I guess it would. They're number 8. And from a real outsider, Problem is the league is lessened this year because of departures. The AAC, I think the race between Tulane and Texas San Antonio this year is going to be really, really a good race. And Notre Dame. Notre Dame, again, ranked 13th to start the season. I can see them rising. I know we have some debate on this show with the followers and myself. I think Marcus Freeman's a really good coach. I think he did a really good job last year when that team was reeling to start the season. He's got a real quarterback. The question is going to be whether Sam Hartman, if there's enough speed at the receiver position and if they can run the football and put up enough points to help a really good defense. I think Notre Dame could be a surprise contender as well. I'll give you my final four here in just a bit. I didn't bring up Jim. I want to talk about Sean Lutz. What the hell, Sean Lutz? That Clemson player just happened to run into Woody as Woody was stretching. That was a forearm shiver that Hulk Hogan would have been proud of, Ed. I'll tell you right now. I see that. I got the guy's name, believe it or not, the linebacker. He was a linebacker. God, I got his name right at the top of my brain here. No, it was when Jim and Wendell. Oh, Wendell played for the Bears. I get you. I got you. I forgot Wendell Davis was one of the receivers for the Bears. USC not firing Alex Grinch this season, off season. Just another example of extremely poor leadership in Southern Cal. Now, USC, again, USC is another team. They're going to score a ton of points. Caleb Williams is going to try to go for the is going to be a major contender for the Heisman again. And I think that this team, if they play any defense at all, will have a shot at the playoff. But as I said a minute ago, if that defense is as bad as it was last year with a tougher Pac-12 schedule, they're going to struggle to keep it going. Now, I think they did a really good job in hiring their new AD in Jennifer Cohen, I think her name is, from Washington, who did a really good job there. She's the one who brought Chris Peterson to Washington back in 2013, I want to say. Now, she didn't do a great job in her first shot at replacing Peterson with one of his coordinators, Lake, but she corrected that mistake quickly into his second year. And it would appear, that she's got it right now with DeBoer there. I think Washington, and I know John's going to hate this, out west, I think Washington and USC are real playoff contenders. Problem is that league, while it's breaking up, is going to cannibalize itself possibly. I know John hates the football out there, but they can play some offense. Washington's got a good football team. Utah's got a good football team. We'll see what happens when Florida goes to Utah in week 1 and Utah tries to return the favor. Utah's blowing up their championship hopes, playoff hopes, the first week, the last couple of years. We'll see where that continues. Notre Dame's at 8-14. Are they, John? Are they? Are they really? Hold on. I'm going to go through Notre Dame's schedule. They beat Navy. They beat Tennessee State. They beat NC State. They beat Central Michigan. Now, I know these aren't big schools, John, but the SEC does play some of these schools as well. They get Ohio State at home. I think they beat Ohio State. Sorry, Ed, you may turn off the show if you disagree with me that badly. No, you're entitled to disagree with me. I'm just kidding. I think they beat Ohio State at home on that second to last weekend in September. 5-0. They're going to beat Duke. They're going to beat Louisville. I think they're going to lose to USC. They beat Pittsburgh. I think at worst, they might lose to Clemson. This team's 10-2 at worst, in my mind. I don't know where you get 4 losses here. You got to have them losing to Ohio State, obviously, USC, Clemson, and I'm guessing, I don't know, either NC State or Louisville. Oh, we got a lot. Comments. You guys are good. Charlie Bauman. Thank you. I had that name right there on the top of my brain. Thank you, Ed. Ed probably just clicked off the show when I said Notre Dame will beat Ohio State. I said 20 years an assistant at the Rock. Don't slip on the Rock. You guys are killing me. Oh, I'm still confused as to why Caleb Williams won the Heisman last year. When was this Heisman moment? Throwing 3 TDs against Rice in the fourth quarter when the Trojans were up by 4 scores. It's funny. I wish I could remember the game now, John. I do remember a moment where I said Caleb Williams won the Heisman Trophy. I really do. Might have been the UCLA game. I can't remember. I mean, who are we going to give it to last year? Are you going to give it to Stetson Bennett? Max Dugan? And I'm not a big numbers guy. You don't have to have gaudy numbers to win the Heisman in my mind. It's become a quarterback trophy, but it's been a cyclical thing. And the way college football is played now, quarterbacks are going to win. He had the best numbers. And I mean, I remember the days where you didn't have to have the best numbers to win a Heisman Trophy. You didn't have to rush for 2,400 yards. Hell, John Cappelletti didn't even lead the country in rushing or touchdowns or anything. He was just a great player, a great leader. Because Heisman stands for more than just the best numbers, right? They have awards for everything. So it should be the best college player. And you're probably right. You're probably right, John. But again, the way Heisman is voted on today, he will be considered this year. Ed went to school with Alex Grinch. His dad was my principal, his principal, not mine, in middle school in Grove City, Ohio. Interesting. Well, there you go. We got a connection to one of the most debated assistant coaches in college football today, right here on this show. Do you still have any contact with Alex, Ed? I thought the USC AD search was hilarious. I think 4 different people turned them down before that woman took the job. Can you see damage? No, I can't say damage. So why would you bash this woman? Again, whether it was 4 people, it doesn't matter. They still made a good hire. Sometimes the people you don't hire work out. It works out that you didn't hire them. The last guy they hired was an abomination. And this woman did a great job at Washington. Why would you rip her? I know it's your want to rip USC and everything to Pac-12, John. But I think they get the hire right. Sometimes you don't get it right. You get turned down and you get it right by accident. But I think they got it right here. So you're not so sure they beat NC State. I know that game's on the road. We're talking about Notre Dame again. I don't know who the NC State. They got to replace their quarterback who left to go to Kentucky, Larry. So they're going to be, again, an adjustment period there. We'll see. NC State's always a sneaky game for anybody. Ohio State's going to beat Notre Dame like a priest beats it. Oh, jeez. Oh, God. You're going to get me kicked off of Facebook because what's going to happen here. Because I'm okay being politically incorrect. Sometimes Facebook doesn't think so. Charlie Bauman was a no. I thought he was a no. I thought he was a linebacker, wasn't he? You can help me out here, Ed, because I think Charlie Bauman was a linebacker for Clemson because I think Ohio State had just turned the ball over. Oh, you said nose guard. Sorry, I thought you saw guard. And he was zone dog when he caught that interception. Interesting. I thought he was linebacker, so good call if that's accurate. I'm not going to dispute that. Notre Dame is playing a cupcake schedule. Well, one of the problems Notre Dame's going to have, and again, I said they will stay independent until the money isn't there or a path to the playoff isn't there. But it will get harder for them to schedule. And again, it's not the hardest schedule I've ever seen for sure. See, I will not argue that. But again, I do think that there's a possibility. They beat USC, they could go 10-1. They could go 12-0. They could. They're going to score points against USC. That game's going to be up and down the field. And I think Sam Hartman's going to have a really good year there. You would have given the Heisman to Max Duggan last year. I think a lot of people would have been okay with that. I'd have been okay with Stetson Bennett. Man, all he did was win back-to-back national championships when the team just tried to replace him at every turn. I would have been okay with Stetson Bennett. Ohio State might lose, but Brutus Buckeye would beat the hell out of their leprechaun. I saw one of the great outtake from game day. We were talking about game day earlier, and one of Coach Corso's picks dropped an F-bomb. That was awesome. I think it was an Ohio State game. I can't remember. I'd have to watch a clip again now to remember. The one might do a good job, but when you're the fifth person being offered the job, you're being offered damage goods. I thought you were referring to her. Well, look at USC is still a brand, John. It may not be a brand you like, but USC is still a brand, and Lincoln Riley did a good job restoring that brand last year in his first year. Now they got to fix the defense. You can't deny. You can talk all you want about the soft football in California, and maybe you mean now, but through the years, I'm pretty sure USC's in the top 5 of national championships. Just saying. If I wanted to rip USC for the sake of ripping USC, I'd say that hiring a female D was obviously a woke hire. You could have done that, yes. I guess you just did. You do rip. Come on, John. You rip the Pac-12 just for the sake of ripping them. You know that. Separate the politics from the football. I know it's getting hard to do. Believe me, I do. Duggan had more games where his teams couldn't have won without him than any other player last year. It wasn't even close. Probably. I mean, he didn't even start the season as a starter. So, again, look, Max Duggan was a great story. I would have had no problem giving him the Heisman Trophy last year. But I also wouldn't have had trouble giving it to Stetson Bennett either. I'm trying to give it to one of your guys, John. Oh, it's getting late. I'm going to go through my conference picks real quick. You guys can comment, and I'll come back to your comments. Then we're going to go through this week's games in week 0, which are not all that great, but we'll go there anyway. Big 12, I'm going to pick, believe it or not, I'm going to pick Oklahoma to win the Big 12 on their way out the door. Texas is a team that I think could greatly underachieve here, to go back to Anthony's question from before. So I'll go through these quickly. Pac-12, I'm going to pick Washington to win this league. I think USC is going to have a tough time with Oregon with Washington on the schedule this year. I think Washington wins the championship, but they probably won't make the playoff because I think they will have a couple losses. SEC, I'm going to stick, unlike last year where I kind of rooted and picked against Georgia at every stop because people didn't go back-to-back and they lost so many players. I'm going to go and say Georgia wins the SEC, gets to the playoff, and wins a national championship for a third year in a row. First time in 70-some years. Where else am I going to go here? Let's go through these conferences real quick. And then I'm going to give you my, where's my, great. Now I lost, there's my scoreboard. Where the hell did my standings go? All right, let's go through the conferences. The AAC, really good battle here. Tulane and Texas San Antonio. I will take the newcomer, Texas San Antonio. Coach Traylor's got a great team here. I think they win this and potentially crack the top 10. ACC, Florida State, I already talked about. I already talked about the Big 12. I already talked about the Big 10. Did I talk about the Big 10? I'm going to take Ohio State to win against whoever they put up against them in the West by about 30 in the championship game. Conference USA, I like UTEP Miners here. That's the Independents. Mid-American Conference, again, this league's going to be a toss-up. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bulls, though, in a bit of an upset. Out in the Mountain West, a really underrated football conference in my mind, guys. And this will be a much better conference if Oregon State and Washington State do make their way there. Still debatable whether some of these teams will go to the Pac-12 and keep that intact. But in this race, I'm going to say Boise State is back. Boise State is back, and they win the Mountain West. Pac-12, I already told you, Washington. Southeast Conference, I gave you Georgia. Sun Belt, I'm going to take Coastal Carolina. New coach, same quarterback. If their defense plays okay, there's going to be a lot of shootouts in this league, but I'll take Coastal Carolina to win that conference. My final four, and then we'll get to this week's games, and I'll get some comments, and then we'll get to this week's games before we wrap up. My final four, Georgia, Florida State. Hold on. I got to look at something. You guys can give me yours if you want. Georgia, Florida State. Boy, it gets tough from here. Oklahoma. And LSU, John. LSU. Two teams from the SEC again. John's got more. John's still defending his ripping of the Pac-12. I ripped the Pac-12 because they deserve it. And play some good football out there. Stetson Bennett wasn't tall enough to win the Heisman. Yeah, he towers over Doug Flutie, doesn't he? I hope he missed the T there by accident. Stanford, UCLA are the top three, but Texas is coming. There's Ed. Ryan Day's son just got offered a scholarship from Boston College. Go Eagles. Fighting Doug Flutie's a good friend of mine, Charlie Beekman's son. Josh was an offensive lineman there, as I talk about a lot. That's why I have the Eagles, if you notice behind me. One of the reasons I have this stadium, Ed, is because in honor of Josh, he played there with Matt Ryan, the great Matt Ryan, back in the early 2000s now. We used to travel all over to see this team play, and we had a lot of fun. So congratulations to Ryan Day's son, and I guess Ed is also now an Eagles fan. John thinks Oregon wins the Pac-12. All the other teams that broke up the conference are going to get a fair shake from the All those other teams that broke up the conference aren't going to get a fair shake from the Pac-10 rest. Then, Oregon State. I'm sorry, I missed a state in this one. Listen, Oregon State's got a really good team. A really good team. And that could happen. That could happen. I'm not sure about the refs thing, but Oregon State played good football last year and had a chance to get to the championship game. Ed says Georgia wins. They know how to win. How to rig things. Don't indict me, please. Don't worry. You're not going to get indicted. Everybody's entitled to their opinion here. Sometimes I blast people and I lose my cool and whatnot, but everybody's entitled to their opinion and nothing's personal. We'll all leave here friends all the time. Right, John? John, I can tell you. Ohio State wins the Big Ten by 30 and don't make the playoff. Did I leave them out? My bad. You're right. I misspoke. Somehow I missed that. Let me give you my final four again. Georgia, Ohio State. I'm sorry about that. Oklahoma. I think I did. Oh, Florida State. There you go. Sorry, I somehow got LSU in there. I do not have two teams in there this year. I was looking at my note, got turned upside down over here because my wife is here playing on my desk. So thank you for catching me in that, Ed. I do have Ohio State in the Final Four. Georgia, Ohio State, Florida State, Oklahoma. Here's one of the teams talking about risers and fallers. I left Oklahoma out of that list. Not even ranked right now, guys. I think they win the Big 12 and surprise people on their way over to John's SEC, where they'll be just another team, by the way, because they have no brand recognition over there. John's got Georgia, Michigan, Penn State. Interesting, and LSU. I do think LSU will give Georgia a battle. Listen, I think there could be 7 teams, and 3 good teams are going to get left out this year. But Penn State, they just haven't proven to me that Franklin hasn't beaten Ohio State or Penn State. I'm sorry, or Michigan enough for me to warrant them giving the real consideration for a playoff spot, much less a chance, even a chance in the conference championship, much less a playoff spot. If you want to see him lose his cool, just starting participation. Sure, I'm not going down that road anymore, John. Actually, you had me shrinking in my chair last week, John. Hot tamales. All right, let's take a quick look here at this week's games. I know it's week 0. Not a lot of excitement on the horizon, but we do have some good games. I shouldn't say good games. There's a couple of interesting games, if you will. First game, probably the best game on the board, even though it's a 20-point spread. I'm sorry. I got Ohio State in the brain here since you showed up, Ed. Navy is at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is the home team. They played in Ireland twice before. They're playing in Dublin, as you know. They played 96 and 2012, and the Irish won huge both times. I do think Sam Hartman is going to really help this team get the ball down the field if his receivers are fast enough to get down the field quick enough. Last year, Navy gave Notre Dame a tough time. I think Notre Dame wins this game. I don't think they cover the spread. I think this will be roughly a 30-15 victory for Notre Dame to get the season started. UTEP, who I just said I like to win their conference, they're going to be at Jacksonville State on CBS Sports Network at 5:30. Rich Rodriguez, by the way, speaking of Michigan, back in FBS and coaching Jacksonville State, and they're making their Conference USA debut. So a conference game to get started here in week 0. Not always the norm, for sure. I like UTEP to win this game. I think there'll be some points scored, 35-32. How about that? UMass, by the way, in most polls I've seen, ranked 133rd out of 133 schools. They're going to visit New Mexico State. Does anybody really care? UMass does have a Clemson transfer quarterback, and Tiasin, I'll never say this guy's name, so I'm not even going to try. Fomanaka. They're hoping they breathe life into an offense. This is the worst team in college football, guys. New Mexico State wins this one for fun. Ohio at San Diego State. Kind of an interesting game. San Diego State, a 3-point favorite out of the Mountain West. Ohio quarterback Curtis Rourke is returning after missing last season with a torn ACL. And I'll test that. They've got a really good offense at San Diego State. I think it's possible there's an upset in this game. I'm going to take Ohio to win this game 30-27, maybe in overtime. Hawaii at Vanderbilt. Nobody cares. It's on the SEC network at 7:30. 17 points Vanderbilt is. I believe Vanderbilt went to Hawaii last year and absolutely killed them. They're minus 17 in this game. I think they cover the spread here and win by 20, let's say. Maybe a little more than 20. What's next? Florida International at Louisiana Tech. It's a bit of an interesting game, and the fact that there's a second-year coach at Louisiana Tech after their coach went off to Florida. They have a Boise State transfer quarterback. I think Louisiana State, again, a lot of points scored in this game. I would take the over here. Louisiana Tech wins this game 35-31, I would say. Will be my pick. Let's see. There are other games that we want to talk about here that I missed in this first go-around. We'll get to your guys' comments here in a second before we wrap things up. I think I picked all the games. Oh, San Jose State and USC. I forgot all about it. This will be a blowout. San Jose State might be sneaky cover here. I don't know what the line is on this game. I don't have the line on this game. Maybe they didn't put one out. But I think USC wins this game, but probably not as much as you think. Maybe 20 points. I don't think it'll be a blowout, though, as USC looks to get that. I might bet the over in this game as well. But again, so a bit of a week zero, if you will. I think the NCAA needs to fix this week zero thing, too, because I think we need something more than what we're getting here. Where did I leave off here? I don't know where I left off. Oh, maybe I didn't miss that many. I missed a couple of comments. Rocky's offering blooper highlight already. Dublin. So it's a good week for football. What else, guys? 8:28. We didn't get to a lot of stuff, but I like that because we had a good, lively conversation. Welcome to the show, Ed. I hope you will tune in weekly. And if you don't catch us live, you can always catch us on TGI Sports Talk. I invite you to come and like and follow the show. Invite your friends. Share this show if you would. We're pushing past 2,000 followers, and I've also got an offer to potentially have some advertising with the show. So, hey, who knows? Maybe we'll start making 2 or 3 cents a show here, and we'll see how that goes. I'm trying to decide whether it's a legit thing or I'm getting myself screwed. So I think it's legit. I just don't know if I'm going to do it. That's all. That's it, guys. We're gonna call it a night. Been a good night. We're gonna have real football to talk about next week. Great matchups coming up next week, all through Labor Day weekend. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 days. And there's a good game almost every single one of those days, if I'm not mistaken. Ed, thanks for the comment. You want to coach the defense at Ohio State? I'd be happy to. What are they paying these days? Got to be at least, $200,000, and I'm in. Don't forget to check out the story. I will. I couldn't get Facebook to open to do it, but maybe we'll talk about it next week for sure. Rick, remind me, or we'll talk about it Sunday in the Stream of Consciousness. Thank you very much. Rick, CA, John DeLong, Alan, Anthony, Ed, as I mentioned, our new Ohio State buddy. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Guys, we will see you next week right here with TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle. And we'll see you Sunday with the Stream of Consciousness, and Friday with Are You Serious? And the Mad New Yorker. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.